When a man works for you for 11 years, shows up every single morning without fail, knows your schedule better than you do, remembers the names of your family members without being reminded, and never once gives you a reason to doubt him, you do not expect to lose him on a Tuesday. You definitely do not expect to lose him on a sidewalk, in front of a film crew, in the middle of a foggy morning in Carmel, California, with the whole thing caught on camera in 17 seconds that the entire internet would soon watch on a loop. But that is exactly what happened to Clint Eastwood. His driver, a quiet, steady, deeply loyal man who had given 11 years of his life to this job, took off his cap, set it gently on the hood of the car, said 2 words and walked away. Just like that. Gone. Now here is the part that nobody saw coming. Because in a situation like this, most people in Clint's position would make a call, get a replacement, move on. The production was waiting. The crew was standing right there. The schedule was already running late. The easiest thing in the world would have been to let the man walk and deal with it later. Clint Eastwood did not do the easy thing. What he did instead was so unexpected, so completely simple, and so quietly powerful that a retired nurse watching it on her phone screen in Bakersfield cried for 20 straight minutes, that a podcaster devoted a 40-minute episode to it, that a retired judge made his daughter sit down and watch it, and all he could say afterward was, "That man understands something." But here is what nobody knew when they watched that 17-second clip. There was something in Clint's coat pocket that entire time. Something small. Something that had been sitting on the hood of a car in the fog, waiting. Something he went back for when he did not have to, when nobody asked him to, when every minute of his morning was already pulling him in the other direction. What was it? And what does it tell us about who Clint Eastwood really is when the cameras are not pointed at him? Stay with us for the whole story, because what happened between that sidewalk and the end of this video will change the way you think about what it truly means to see another person. Darnell Whitaker had been driving Clint Eastwood for 11 years. He was 44 years old. He stood 6 feet tall and was built like a man who used to play college football, which he did, won it for 2 seasons at a small school in the Valley before a knee injury ended that chapter of his life. He kept his hair cut close to his head. He wore the same plain black cap every single day. He had a wife named Rosalind, 2 daughters named Maya and Bree, and a dog named Pepper who slept at the foot of the bed and snored like a broken engine. Darnell was not a famous man. He did not want to be famous. He wanted a steady job, a warm house, and enough money left over to send Maya to the community college she had been studying like a treasure map for the last 6 months. That was it. That was the whole dream. For 11 years, the job with Mr. Eastwood had been that steady job. The hours were long, but you could count on them. The pay was fair. The man himself was quiet, direct, and almost never difficult. He did not ask Darnell to lie for him. He did not ask Darnell to carry things that were not bags. He said please. He said thank you. He remembered the names of Darnell's daughters without ever being reminded. Once, when Bree had her tonsils taken out, and Darnell showed up to work looking gray and hollow-eyed from a night of no sleep, Clint had looked at him once and said 2 words, "Go home." Not a question, not a suggestion, just go home. Darnell had gone home. So no, the problem was never Clint Eastwood. The problem was a man named Preston Foyle. Preston Foyle was 31 years old. He wore expensive watches on his wrist and cheaper suits on his back. He had the kind of smile that arrived before the rest of his face got there and left before the conversation was actually over. And he was a junior producer attached to Clint's newest project, a documentary about the California coast that a big streaming company had been begging Clint to make for 3 years running. Preston Foyle did not like Darnell. He never said that out loud. Men like Preston Foyle almost never said things out loud. Instead, they said things sideways, around corners, in the exact tone of voice that left no fingerprints. He called Darnell the driver in meetings where Darnell was standing right there in the same room, close enough to hear every word. He sent out schedule changes to every single person on the production, every camera operator, every production assistant, every person whose job was to carry someone else's coffee, and left Darnell off the list every time. He dropped little comments into the group chat, small things. Nothing you could point to and say, look, right there, that is the problem. Just small things placed carefully, like pebbles in a shoe. The other people on the production laughed at Preston's jokes, or they looked at their shoes and said nothing. Nobody pushed back. Darnell said nothing either. He had a mortgage. He had a daughter eyeing that community college. He had Pepper's vet bills and Bree's school supplies, and a water heater that was making a sound it had not made 2 years ago. He kept his head down. He drove the car. He did his job. But on the morning of the Tuesday in question, something inside him broke. It is always something small that breaks it. Preston Foyle had arranged for a film crew to ride in Darnell's car that morning. 3 crew members, their gear, 2 camera bags, one and a lighting kit that should not have fit but somehow always did. He had moved Mr. Eastwood's departure time up by 45 minutes. He had sent the new schedule to everyone connected to the production. He did not send it to Darnell. So when Darnell pulled up at 8:15 a.m., exactly on time for the schedule he had actually received, Preston was already standing on the curb. The 3 crew members were behind him. Their gear was stacked at their feet. Preston had a look on his face like Darnell had driven over his lawn. "You're late," Preston said. Loud, clear, the kind of loud that wants an audience. Darnell looked at his phone. "My call time was 8:15. We updated it last night. Did you not check your messages?" Darnell had checked his messages. There were no messages from Preston Foyle. And there had not been a single message from Preston Foyle about a schedule change. "I did not receive an update," Darnell said. He kept his voice flat and even. He was good at keeping his voice flat and even. Preston Foyle shrugged, one shoulder. Slow, like the whole thing bored him. And then he said the thing that ended 11 years and 20 seconds flat. "I don't know what to tell you." Preston looked at the crew members beside him. He looked back at Darnell. "Maybe the problem is that people in certain positions just aren't detail-oriented enough for this kind of work." Certain positions? The crew went very quiet. A production assistant named Gwen Morales, who had been watching Preston Foyle behave this way for 6 long weeks, felt her stomach drop straight through the sidewalk. Clint Eastwood, Ian, who had come out of the hotel at that exact moment with his duffel bag over one shoulder, stopped walking. He had heard every single word. Darnell had not seen Clint come out. He was looking at Preston Foyle, and something inside his chest that had been pressed down and compressed for 11 months. Not 11 years, just 11 months, because this particular kind of smallness had only arrived when Preston Foyle joined the production. That something finally, at last, gave way. He reached up. He took off his cap. He held it in both hands for a moment, the way you hold something in church when you have just remembered what matters. Then he set it very gently on the hood of the car. "I quit," Darnell Whitaker said. He picked up his personal bag from the trunk. He straightened his jacket. He did not look at Preston Foyle. He did not look at Clint. He did not look at anyone. He walked away, slow at first, then faster. Then he turned the corner and was gone. Preston Foyle stood on the sidewalk with his mouth open. Gwen Morales stared at the corner where Darnell had been. The crew members looked at their shoes. The hotel bellhop behind them had dropped a suitcase without noticing. Clint Eastwood stood still. He looked at the empty corner. He looked at the black cap sitting on the hood of the car like a small, quiet flag. Nobody moved. Nobody said a word. The morning fog sat over everything, cold and heavy, like the whole street was holding its breath and did not yet know when to let it go. Here is what Clint Eastwood did not do. He did not yell. He did not pull out his phone and call his assistant and demand a replacement driver within the hour. He did not hold a press conference on the sidewalk. He did not say a single word to the cameras that 2 tourists had already lifted in his direction. He did not call his lawyer. He did not call anyone at all. He just stood there for a moment. He looked at the empty corner where Darnell Whitaker had turned and disappeared. He looked at the black cap sitting alone on the hood of the car, small and still, like it was waiting for something. Then he picked up his duffel bag, walked calmly around to the driver's side of his own car, and opened the door. Preston Foyle took one small step forward. His smile was gone now. In its place was the look of a man who had just realized the floor under him was not as solid as he had believed. "Mr. Eastwood," Preston said quickly, "I can arrange for a replacement driver immediately. We have people on standby who can be here in 20... Clint looked at him, just looked at him. Now Clint Eastwood had spent 70 years making movies. He had learned over those 70 years exactly what a human face could carry. He had used his own face to carry rage and grief and joy and cold, hard justice in front of cameras all over the world. Audiences had paid money to watch what his face could do. But what was on his face right now was not a performance. It was not practiced. It was not placed there carefully for effect. It was the look of a man who had made up his mind about something. Completely, finally. The kind of decision that does not need to be announced because it is already done. Preston Foyle closed his mouth. He took the small step back. Clint got into the driver's seat. He put on his seatbelt. He adjusted the mirror. He pulled away from the curb the way a man pulls away from a curb when he has somewhere to be and has already spent enough time on this particular sidewalk. He drove himself. Now you might think, so what? Lots of people drive themselves. Old man gets in his own car. That is not a story. That happens every morning in every town in America, and nobody writes anything about it. But here is what you need to understand. Clint Eastwood had not driven himself anywhere in 11 years. Not because he could not. He had a valid license, 2 good eyes, and the kind of steady hands that only come from spending a lifetime doing things on purpose. He did not drive himself because that was the arrangement. Darnell drove. Clint sat in the back and worked, reading scripts, making calls, thinking through problems that needed quiet space to become solutions. Today he drove, and he did not drive to the production office. He did not drive to the filming location out on the coast road where the crew was already setting up and waiting and checking their watches. He turned south on Highway 1, and he just drove into the fog, into the long gray morning, past the cypress trees and the cliff edges, and the ocean showing itself in silver flashes between the hills. Gwen Morales was still standing on the sidewalk, her clipboard pressed hard against her chest like a shield. She watched Clint's car disappear around the bend. Then she took out her phone and typed a message to Felicity Drum, the production coordinator. Mr. E just drove himself. Out heading south on 1, no destination. Preston is still on the sidewalk. Nobody's talking. It is very quiet out here. Felicity Drum had been working in film production for 22 years. She had worked on shoots that ran out of money, shoots that lost their lead actor the week before filming, shoots where the location burned down. She had seen a director faint from heat stroke and finish the shot from a folding chair. She believed genuinely that she had seen everything this industry had to offer. She read Gwen's message. She typed back one word. What? Meanwhile, Preston Foyle was still on the sidewalk. He had not moved much. The crew members around him had quietly drifted toward their equipment, checking lenses, adjusting straps, doing small busy things that kept their eyes pointed away from him. Nobody wanted to be the person standing closest to Preston Foyle right now. He looked down at his hands. He was still holding Darnell's black cap. He had picked it up off the hood of the car without thinking. The way you pick up something that has been left behind, out of old habit, before your brain catches up and tells you what the object actually means. He turned it over once. He turned it over again. And for the first time since Gwen Morales had met him 6 weeks ago, through all the sideways comments and the rearranged schedules and the jokes that landed just a little too close to something real, Preston Foyle looked like a man who did not know what came next. On Highway 1, and the fog was thick and the road was empty, and Clint Eastwood drove south into it like a man who was going somewhere he had not been in a long time and needed to remember the way. Darnell Whitaker walked 6 blocks before he stopped. He stopped because his hands were shaking. He had not known until this exact moment, standing on a sidewalk outside a bakery with a blue door, that his hands could shake like this. He was not a man who shook. He had driven through flash floods, through blowout tires on mountain roads, through one very bad night outside Sacramento that he did not talk about. His hands had been steady through all of it. They were not steady now. He sat down on a low stone wall next to the bakery. Through the front window, he could see a woman in a white apron pulling a baking tray out of a big silver oven. The tray was full of something golden and warm. Steam rose off it in soft white curls. The smell of cinnamon and fresh bread drifted out through the gap under the door and found him on his wall. Normal things. the whole world being completely normal. He pressed his hands flat against his thighs and breathed. He had quit his job. He had quit the best-paying, most steady job he had ever held in his life. He had quit it in front of a film crew, in front of the man he had driven for 11 years, in front of Preston Foyle's open, stunned mouth. He had put his cap on the hood of a car and walked away. He breathed again. What was he going to tell Rosalind? Rosalind was a practical woman. She was a nurse, which meant she had spent 20 years watching life hand people its very worst moments and had learned to stay calm inside all of them. She was not the kind of woman who yelled when something went wrong. She was the kind of woman who got very, very quiet, who asked calm questions in a calm voice, one after the other, until you could see the full shape of what you had done laid out in front of you like a map. Darnell loved her more than he had words for. Right now, he was terrified of her calm voice. He looked at his phone. 3 messages were waiting. One from Rosalind, sent an hour ago. Morning. Bree forgot her lunch again. Don't forget Maya's orientation is Thursday. Steady. Ordinary. A Tuesday morning message from a woman who did not yet know her Tuesday was about to change shape. And one from Maya herself. A long string of emojis that he studied for a moment and could not fully decode, but which seemed overall cheerful. And one from a number he did not recognize. He stared at the unknown number. In 11 years of driving a famous person, he had learned to be careful about unknown numbers. Unknown numbers wanted things. They wanted comments, access, information, a moment of your time that turned into 20 minutes of someone else's problem. The number called again. He answered it anyway. Darnell. It was Clint Eastwood's voice. Clint never announced himself on the phone. He simply started talking, as if the conversation had already been going on for a while, and you had just arrived at the part that mattered. Darnell looked at the bakery window. And the woman in the white apron was now writing something on a small chalkboard near the door. I'm sitting on a wall, Darnell said, outside a bakery. Which one? The one on San Carlos, blue door. A pause, a short one. I know it, Clint said. Good sourdough. Another pause. Longer this time. The kind of pause that is not empty, but full of something that has not yet found its words. You heard what he said, Darnell said. It was not a question. He already knew the answer. He had seen the exact moment Clint came through the hotel door. He had replayed it 3 times in his head during the 6 blocks of walking. I heard every word, Clint said. Then you know why I left. I know exactly why you left, Clint said, and I am not calling to argue with you about it. Darnell waited. Outside, a car slowed at the curb, looked for parking, gave up, and moved on. A man on a bicycle rode past with a bag of groceries hanging from each handlebar, leaning forward into the hill like he had somewhere important to be and was not going to let gravity stop him. I'm calling, Clint said, to ask if you'd like a cup of coffee. Darnell pulled the phone away from his ear and looked at it. He put it back. You want to get coffee, he said slowly. Not a question. More like a man reading a sentence in a language he mostly knows, but is checking to make sure he has the right word. The bakery on San Carlos has good coffee too, if I remember correctly, Clint said. I'll be there in about 12 minutes. You do not have to stay if you don't want to, but I'm going to be there either way. The line went quiet. Not dead. Clint had not hung up. Darnell could hear the wind sound of a car moving fast on an open road, the particular rushing sound of Highway 1 with the windows cracked and the ocean somewhere close. Okay, Darnell said. 12 minutes, Clint said. Then he did hang up. Darnell sat on the wall. The woman in the white apron had finished writing on her chalkboard. He could read it from where he sat. Today's special, almond morning bun, $3.50. He looked at that for a while. He thought about what certain positions meant when a man like Preston Foyle said it. He thought about the 6 weeks of missed schedules and sideways jokes, and the feeling of being present in a room but not counted as present. He thought about how you can know exactly what someone is doing to you and still feel it go in. Well, that was the part that had been sitting in his chest all morning like a stone. Not the anger. The anger was clean and simple, and he understood it. It was the other thing, the quiet question underneath the anger, the one that asked, why did it work? He had known what Preston was doing every single time. He had seen it coming. He had named it to himself in the car, driving home on more than one dark evening, and still it had worked. He did not have an answer yet, but he thought, sitting on his stone wall with his slowly steadying hands and the smell of warm cinnamon bread around him, that he might need a cup of coffee and a different kind of conversation before the answer would come clear. He stood up. He walked to the blue door. He pushed it open. He ordered 2 coffees, both black, because he did not know which one Clint would want, but he knew one thing for certain about the man after 11 years. And he sat down at the table closest to the window. He watched the door. 12 minutes, the man had said. Darnell watched the door and waited. Clint Eastwood came through the blue door at exactly 12 minutes. Not 11, not 13, 12. Darnell had been watching the door and he knew. Clint came in the same way he did everything, without looking around to see if anyone had noticed him arrive, without slowing at the entrance the way famous people sometimes do, just long enough for the room to catch up with the fact of them. He walked straight to the table by the window, pulled out the chair across from Darnell, and sat down. Behind the counter, a teenager looked up from the espresso machine. He blinked once, twice. Then he turned back to the machine and stared at it like it had just asked him a very important question. At a table in the back corner, an older man in a gray sweater had been reading a newspaper. He folded it down. He looked at Clint for a long, steady moment. The look of a man who had decided somewhere in the last decade of his life that he was done being impressed by things and was doing a solid job of sticking to that decision. Then he folded the newspaper back up and went on reading. Clint looked at the 2 cups on the table. "You ordered already," he said. "I didn't know which one you'd want," Darnell said. "They're both black." "That works." He picked up the closer cup. He took one slow sip. He set it down without comment, which meant it was fine, which from Clint Eastwood meant it was good. Sure, for a moment, neither of them spoke. This was not uncomfortable. In 11 years of early mornings and long drives and waiting outside studios in the car with the engine off, Darnell and Clint had built up a whole library of shared silences. They knew which ones were empty and which ones were full. They knew the difference between a silence that needed to be filled and a silence that needed to be left alone to do its work. This silence was the second kind. It was doing its work. Clint was the one who broke it. "I should have dealt with foil 3 weeks ago," he said. Darnell looked up from his cup. "You knew?" "I suspected. A production assistant came to me about a month back. She said she wanted to flag a team dynamic issue. She was careful with her words. She did not use his name." He paused. "She was protecting herself. She was right to do it. I told Felicity to look into it. Felicity said she would. And then I had 12 other things to deal with that week, and I moved on." He looked at his cup. "That was a mistake," he said simply. No drama in it. No performance of guilt. Just a plain statement of a plain fact from a man who had learned over a very long life that plain facts were more useful than decorated ones. Darnell was quiet. "I'm not telling you this to excuse myself," Clint said. "I'm telling you because you deserve the truth more than you deserve an apology. An apology without the truth is just a way of making the person giving it feel better about themselves." Outside the window, a woman walked past the bakery with a small dog on a red leash. And the dog stopped directly in front of the glass and looked in with the expression of an animal who had serious questions about what was happening inside and intended to get to the bottom of it. The woman tugged the leash gently. The dog reconsidered. They moved on. Darnell turned his cup in both hands. Slow circles. His hands had stopped shaking some time ago. He had noticed this without quite being able to explain it. "You know what the worst part was?" he said. Clint waited. "The schedule." Darnell looked up. He sent that updated schedule to every single person on that production, every PA, every camera operator, every person whose job is to stand around and hand someone else a coffee. And I'm standing on the curb being told in front of all of them that I'm not detail-oriented enough. He paused. That is not an accident. That is not a man forgetting to copy someone. That is a specific choice to make a specific kind of point to a specific kind of person. Clint looked at him directly. "Yes," he said, "it is." No softening, no looking away. Just, yes. Darnell felt something in his chest move. Not break, more like shift. The way a door shifts when the pressure on the other side of it is finally gone. "My father drove a bus," Darnell said. He had not planned to say this. It came up the way things come up when the pressure is gone and the doors open and the right person is sitting across from you with time and a cup of black coffee. 41 years, he continued. Same route, same company, same city. He never missed a single day except for my mother's funeral, and one time when he had pneumonia so bad he could not stand without holding the wall. He was proud of that job. Genuinely, deeply proud. Not the kind of proud that needs anyone to see it. Just the real kind. He looked at the window. But people made comments, he said. Over the years, small ones. The kind you can't take to anyone because there is nothing solid enough to hold in your hand and show. Just small comments, placed just right, that let you know exactly how little space they thought you deserved to take up. He paused. He never said anything about it. I used to get so frustrated with him. I'd say, "Dad, you don't have to put up with that. You don't have to just sit there." He would look at me very calmly and say, "Darnell, I've got a route to drive." A group of cyclists came through the blue door. 5 of them, loud and bright in their colored gear, laughing about something that had happened on the hill. They filled up the long table in the middle of the room and began ordering everything on the menu. Darnell waited for the noise to settle, then continued. "I spent years thinking he was wrong," he said. "I thought he was letting people get away with something they should not get away with. I thought staying quiet was the same as giving up." He was quiet for a moment. "But sitting on that wall this morning, I started to understand what he actually meant. He was not saying it didn't hurt. He was saying the route is real. The work is real. The people who needed to get somewhere and did get somewhere because of him, that was all real. And the comments were just noise next to all of that." He looked at Clint. "But I also think there is a point," he said, "where the noise gets so loud and so constant that you cannot hear the root anymore. You cannot feel the work. You cannot remember why it mattered. And when that happens..." He stopped. He looked at his cup. "I don't know. What do you do when that happens?" The bakery was warm and full of the smell of bread and coffee. The cyclists argued cheerfully about who had fallen furthest behind on the hill. The teenager behind the counter had found his footing again and was making drinks with great focus. Clint set his cup down. "You stop," he said. "You tell the truth, and then you see what comes next." Darnell looked at him. "What has come next?" he said. Clint Eastwood had been making movies for 7 decades. He had spoken thousands of words written by other people. He had played men who always knew the answer, and men who were looking for it, and men who had stopped looking entirely. Over all of those years, in all of those rooms, he had developed a very exact sense of when something needed to be said right now, and when it needed one more moment to become what it was trying to become. This was the second kind of moment. "Let me tell you," he said, "about a woman named Harriet Voss." And the story turned a corner it had been heading toward all morning. Harriet Voss was 78 years old and lived in a yellow house in Big Sur. The house sat on a road that switchbacked up a cliff 12 miles south of Carmel, the kind of road that argued with you the whole way up and only let you arrive when it was good and ready. The house had a wide front porch, a garden that Harriet maintained with strong opinions, and a pair of gloves she had owned since 1987, and a large gray cat named Ptolemy, who sat in the front window most of the day and watched the ocean with the patient, serious expression of an animal who was gathering information. Harriet had been Clint Eastwood's personal assistant for 9 years before her knees finally told her, in terms she could not argue with, that they were done with stares and long days and the particular brand of organized chaos that came with running a working director's life. She had retired to the Yellow House. She had taken Ptolemy, her books, her garden gloves, and her extremely strong opinions about nearly everything with her. She and Clint had known each other for 40 years. She was one of perhaps 6 people on the entire earth who could look Clint Eastwood directly in the eye and tell him he was wrong and have him actually sit with it rather than walk away from it. She did not charge him for this. She did not consider it a service. She considered it the basic price of a real friendship, which was the only kind she had ever been interested in. 3 weeks before the Tuesday morning on the sidewalk, Clint had called her. He had told her about the production, about the documentary and the streaming company and the beautiful, complicated stretch of California coast he was trying to capture on film. And he had told her about a junior producer named Preston Foyle, who had been making the whole production feel smaller and meaner and tighter than it needed to be, in ways that were hard to point to directly, but that everyone inside the production could feel. Harriet had listened to all of it without interrupting. When he was done, she said, "You need to handle that." "I know," Clint said. "Clint, I know, Harriet. You are going to wait too long." Her voice was not unkind. It was the voice of someone who had watched a particular pattern repeat itself enough times to have given it a name. "You are excellent with story problems. You always have been. You can fix a broken scene in 20 minutes. But people problems, you see them, you name them to yourself, and then you set them aside because there is always something more urgent pressing on you from the other direction. And by the time you come back to the people problem, it has already grown into something much harder to fix." A pause. "Handle it this week," she said. "Not next week, this week." "I'll take care of it," Clint said. He had not taken care of it that week. Now sitting in the Blue Door Bakery with a cup of coffee and Darnell Whitaker across from him, Clint told this story the way he told all stories, plainly in order, without making himself the hero of any part of it. This was one of the things Darnell had noticed about him over 11 years. Most people, when they tell a story about a mistake they made, find a way to soften the edges of their own role in it. They add context that makes the mistake feel understandable. They arrive at the end still standing in reasonable light. Clint did not do that. He told it straight. "So after I drove away from the hotel this morning," Clint said, "I went south on the highway. I pulled into a coastal overlook and sat for a while. I thought about what Harriet had told me 3 weeks ago, and then I called her." "From the overlook?" Darnell asked. "From the car on the way here. Hands-free," he added, with the smallest possible suggestion of a look that said he was aware of how that detail sounded, coming from a 93-year-old man. Darnell almost smiled. Almost. "What did she say?" he asked. "She said I told you so," Clint said. "For approximately 45 seconds. She was thorough about it, and then she got practical, because that is what Harriet does once she has made her point. She puts it down and moves forward." He picked up his coffee. "The practical part went like this," he said. "She said the documentary matters. The coast matters. Foyle is a symptom, not the disease. The real problem is that the production has gotten big and fast, and nobody has been tending the human side of it. The schedules, the communication, the simple business of making sure the right information reaches the right people at the right time. That has been falling apart for months, and a production that falls apart on the human side will fall apart everywhere else soon enough, no matter how good the footage is." He set the cup down. "She said I needed someone who understood logistics, not just as a calendar problem, but as a people problem. Someone who already knew this production from the inside. Someone who had been keeping it running quietly, running from a position where nobody was paying enough attention to notice." Darnell looked at him carefully. He was beginning to see where this was going. He was not sure yet how he felt about where it was going. There was a part of him, the part that had walked away from a curb 2 hours ago and meant it, that wanted to be careful, wanted to move slowly, wanted to make sure that what was being offered was real and solid and not just a kind gesture wrapped around an empty center. He had learned over 44 years of living and 20 years of working for other people that the difference between those two things was not always easy to see from the outside. "She was not talking about a driver," Clint said. He looked at Darnell steadily. "She was talking about you." The bakery was warm around them. The cyclists were still at their long table, quieter now, working through their drinks. The teenager behind the counter was wiping down the espresso machine with the slow, circular motion of someone who had found a task that required just enough attention to keep the rest of the mind still. Outside, the fog had thinned. Through the window at the end of the street, a pale strip of blue had appeared where the ocean met the sky. Darnell looked at it. He looked back at Clint. "I'm a driver," he said. Clint did not blink. "You have been doing the work of a production coordinator," he said, "for 3 years, from the wrong seat." Rosalind Whitaker received the phone call from her husband at 10:43 in the morning. She was on her break in the hospital staff room. sitting at the small round table by the window with a cheese sandwich and a 3-day-old newspaper. She preferred real paper to a phone screen, even when the news was old. The staff room smelled like coffee and someone's reheated soup and the particular kind of quiet that only exists in buildings where people are always working very hard just on the other side of every wall. She answered on the second ring. "Hey," Darnell said. Rosalind had been married to this man for 19 years. In 19 years, she had learned approximately 400 different versions of the word hey in his voice. There was the hey that meant he was stuck in traffic and would be late. There was the hey that meant something funny had happened and he could not wait to tell her. And there was the hey that meant one of the girls had done something that required a parental conversation and he was calling to decide who was going to have it. This hey was none of those. This was the hey that meant, I have done something and I need to tell you about it, and I am hoping that when I am done, you will still be on my side. She set down her cheese sandwich. "Tell me," she said. He told her everything. He started at the beginning. Preston Foyle and the schedule that was sent to everyone except him. He told her about the curb and the crew and the words that had been said in front of all of them. He told her about the cap. He told her about the 6 blocks of walking and the stone wall and his shaking hands and the smell of cinnamon bread. He told her about the phone call and the blue door and the 2 black coffees and the conversation that had just happened at the table by the window. He told her about the offer. When he finished, the staff room was very quiet. Rosalind Whitaker looked at her cheese sandwich. She looked at her newspaper. She looked at the window, where the hospital parking lot stretched out gray and flat under the late morning sky, ordinary and enormous at the same time the way parking lots always are. She had worked in the cardiac unit for 14 years. She had sat with people in the hardest moments of their lives. The moment right after the doctor leaves the room, when the news has just landed and the world has not yet rearranged itself around it. She had learned in those 14 years to tell the difference between 3 kinds of moments. And there were bad moments. There were good moments. And there were the complicated kind. The ones that looked bad from the outside but had something solid and right at their center, if you were paying close enough attention to find it. She had learned to find it. "What does your gut say?" she asked. "My gut says yes," Darnell said. "My head is making a list of reasons to be careful." "Tell me the list." "He is 93 years old. The production wraps in 4 months. After that, I have a new title, but I am starting over in a field I have never officially worked in, with no track record anyone can point to." Rosalind was quiet for a moment. "That is one reason," she said. "Wearing 3 different coats to look like more than it is. What else?" A pause. "What if I'm not good at it?" Darnell said. She picked up her cheese sandwich. "Darnell," she said. "What?" "You have been running that production from the wrong seat for 3 years. You told me so yourself, more than once. On more than one evening, when you came home and sat at the kitchen table and talked about how things should have been organized differently and why. You just never said it out loud to anyone who could actually do something about it." She took a bite of her sandwich. "That is the most unnecessary worry you have ever brought to me. And one time you told me we should paint the kitchen purple." A small silence. "The purple would have been fine," Darnell said. "The purple would have been a disaster. And the man at the hardware store knew it, and he sold it to us anyway, because it was not his kitchen." She put her sandwich down. "Say yes." Darnell. "You're sure?" "I am sure that the man who walked away from a curb this morning, because it was the right thing to do, deserves to sit in a better seat." She paused. "I am also sure that you have not been happy in that car for almost a year. You don't talk about it, but I am a nurse. I watch people. I notice things that are not being said out loud." Darnell was quiet on the other end of the line, the kind of quiet that is not empty. "I love you," he said. "I know you do," she said. "Call me after you talk to him again. And Darnell, tell him thank you for going back, for coming to find you. He did not have to do that. He is a man who did not have to do that and did it anyway, and that matters." "I will," Darnell said. She hung up. She finished her cheese sandwich. She folded her 3-day-old newspaper and put it in her bag. She walked back through the door into the cardiac unit and spent the rest of her shift being exactly the nurse she had always been. Fully present, deeply steady, and quietly certain that most things in this life find their way to where they are supposed to be if the right people pay close enough attention at the right moment. Back in the Blue Door Bakery, Darnell's phone buzzed once on the table between him and Clint. He looked at it. A message from Rosalind, 4 words and a small blue heart. Say yes. Love you. He turned the phone around and slid it across the table so Clint could see the screen. He did not say anything. He did not need to. Clint read it. He looked up at Darnell. Smart woman, he said. The smartest I have ever known, Darnell said. And he pulled the phone back. He put it in his pocket. He looked at Clint across the table and the 2 cups of black coffee in the warm, bread-smelling air of the bakery and the strip of blue ocean just visible at the end of the street. And he said, I have conditions. Clint picked up his coffee. Tell me, he said. The conditions were 3. Darnell laid them out the way he laid out a morning route, clearly in order, without extra words. First, everything in writing. The title, the pay, the exact scope of the role, not a handshake and a good feeling. Paper. Second, he would need a week before the new role started, not to think about whether to take it. He had already decided that. He needed the week to learn the parts of the job he had been doing informally for 3 years and turn them into something official and organized and real. Third, Gwen Morales. Clint had listened to the first 2 conditions with his hands around his coffee cup and his eyes steady. When Darnell said the name, something shifted in Clint's expression. Not surprise exactly, more like recognition. Tell me, Clint said. She tried to flag this problem weeks ago, Darnell said. She went to you directly, which took courage, because she was the most junior person on that production, and Foyle was connected to the studio side, and she had no proof of anything solid enough to hold in her hand. And she did it anyway. He paused. She deserves something for that, a real something, not a thank you in a hallway, a promotion, a title, more pay, a something that makes it clear to everyone on that production that speaking up when you see something wrong is worth the risk. Clint was quiet for a moment. Then he said, done. Just that, done. The way he said everything that was already decided. Darnell nodded once. They shook hands across the table, between the 2 empty coffee cups, in the warm and bread-smelling air of the Blue Door Bakery, while the cyclists finished their drinks and the fog finished burning off outside, and the strip of blue ocean at the end of the street got a little wider and a little brighter with every passing minute. Gwen Morales was at her desk in the production office when Felicity Drum called her name. It was the following morning. Gwen had spent the previous afternoon and evening in a state of suspended uncertainty, not quite worried, and not quite relieved, not sure what the next day would bring or what version of the production she would walk into when she arrived. She picked up her clipboard. She walked into Felicity's office. She sat down. Felicity Drum was 54 years old with silver hair pulled straight back and the energy of a woman who had run productions on half the budget they needed and delivered them ahead of schedule. She did not waste time on preamble. I want to talk about the flag you raised with Mr. Eastwood last month, and she said, the team dynamic issue. Gwen's hands tightened on the clipboard. I should have been more specific. I knew I should have been more specific. I kept thinking I needed more before I said anything definite. But the truth is, You were careful, Felicity said, and your caution made sense. You were the most junior person in the room. Foyle had studio connections. You had observations and instincts, but nothing you could put in writing. She looked at Gwen directly. But you still came forward. You found the words you had and you used them. That matters. I want you to know that it matters even when the result takes longer than it should have. Gwen said nothing. She was listening very carefully. Foyle is off the production, Felicity said. Effective yesterday. Gwen let out a breath that had apparently been living in her chest since October, waiting for exactly this moment to leave. Mr. Eastwood also made a specific recommendation regarding you, Felicity continued. A logistics coordination role. Bump in title, bump in pay, broader scope. You would be reporting to the new production coordinator. She paused. Hey, his name is Darnell Whitaker. Gwen went very still. She thought about the sidewalk, about standing there with her clipboard and watching a man she had respected from a distance walk away because the weight of being made small had finally become heavier than everything else. She thought about the sick, hollow feeling of saying nothing while it happened. "Yes," she said. Her voice was steady. "I want that." "Good." Felicity stood, which was her signal that the conversation was complete. "One more thing, Gwen. The flag you raised, I should have moved on it faster. I had what you gave me, and I let other things push it aside. That was my failure, not yours. The system only works if the people above you actually move when you hand them something real." Gwen looked at her. In 14 months of working in film, went through 3 unpaid internships and 1 very long drive to Los Angeles in a car that overheated twice, nobody in a position above her had ever said anything like this to her. She did not quite know what to do with it, except receive it carefully and keep it. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "Don't thank me," Felicity said. "Just remember it when you're the one who is supposed to move." Gwen walked back to her desk. She sat down. She opened her laptop and found 14 new logistics emails waiting, all of them needing sorting and answers and follow-up. She started at the top. She worked steadily, quietly with her clipboard beside her, and the Pacific Ocean doing its enormous, indifferent thing outside the window. For the first time in 6 weeks, the work felt like hers again. The documentary was called The Edge of Everything. It was about the California coast, the long, wild stretch of land between Monterey and Malibu, where the continent simply runs out and the ocean begins. And the space in between is filled with sea otters and pelicans and fishing villages and tide pools and lighthouses and small businesses and big dreams and ordinary people doing extraordinary things in a place that has been called beautiful so many times the word has nearly worn through. Clint Eastwood was not in the documentary. He did not appear on camera once. He had spent his whole life in front of cameras and had decided, somewhere deep in his 80s, that his favorite place in the world was behind one. What he wanted to capture was something that resisted easy capturing. He wanted to show the way a place holds memory, the way the same water that broke against these rocks 100 years ago was breaking against them right now. The way the people who had fished these waters and painted them and written about them and loved them and lost things in them were still somehow present in the quality of the light. This was not a simple thing to film. It required patience. It required being in the right place at what was often the wrong time and simply waiting without complaint until the right time arrived. It required listening, deeply, slowly, without agenda, to people who were not used to being listened to and were not entirely sure they trusted it yet. It required, in other words, almost exactly the set of skills that had been sitting quietly in a driver's seat for 11 years, on doing their work without a title or a nameplate, or anyone paying close enough attention to notice. In his first full week as production coordinator, Darnell rescheduled 3 location shoots that had been stacking up against each other like cars in slow traffic. He untangled a location permit problem in Cambria that had been stuck for 2 full months, lodged in the gap between 2 city departments that had apparently stopped talking to each other sometime the previous spring. He built a new communication system for the whole production, simple, clean, 3 steps that made sure every schedule change reached every person who needed it at the same time, without exception, without anyone being left at the end of the list. And in that first week, through a combination of sharp eyes and genuine curiosity, Gwen Morales found Esperanza Dula. Esperanza was 81 years old. She lived in a small white house 300 yards from one of their planned filming locations in Cambria. Behind a garden of succulents she tended every morning before the heat came. She had been a commercial abalone diver for 30 years, one of very few women in that work, diving the cold waters off the Central Coast with her father first and then on her own. She had 9 grandchildren, strong hands, and a way of speaking about the ocean that made it sound like a person she had known all her life, one she had loved and worried about and watched change in ways that broke her heart in a slow and patient way. Gwen found her by talking to a fisherman at the Cambria Pier who mentioned her name in passing. She brought the name to Darnell. Darnell listened to what Gwen had learned and understood immediately what it meant. He went to Clint. Clint listened for 4 minutes without interrupting. Then he picked up a pencil and began redrawing the structure of the entire Cambria section of the documentary around Esperanza Dula's story. Felicity watched all of this happen in the space of a single week and sent a 1-line email to Clint at the end of it. "You were right about the seat. Clint replied with 4 words. I know. Thank Harriet. On a Tuesday afternoon in November, exactly 3 months after a different Tuesday morning on a different sidewalk, Esperanza Dula sat down in front of a camera in the garden behind her White House and talked for 47 minutes about the abalone. She talked about the cold and the depth and the way light moves underwater in a way that has no comparison on land. She talked about her father, who had dived before her and taught her to read the ocean floor the way other fathers taught their children to read books. She talked about the morning, many years ago now, when she pulled up her net and found almost nothing in it. Not a bad day, not bad luck, something else. Something permanent and large and entirely indifferent to what she needed or wanted or had built her whole life around. She talked about what it meant to love something you could not save, to keep showing up for it anyway, to dive the same cold water every morning, knowing the world below had changed and was still changing and would not stop. She did not cry during any of this. Her eyes stayed dry, her voice stayed level. She looked directly into the camera the entire time, the way a person looks at something they have made their peace with and are not afraid of anymore. Darnell stood behind the monitor watching. He was not, as a general and long-standing rule, a man who cried. He discovered, standing behind that monitor on a Tuesday afternoon in November, in the garden of a woman he had met 3 weeks ago, that this rule had exceptions he had not previously known about. He did not let anyone see it. He stepped away from the monitor. He walked to the edge of the lot where the garden ended, and the view opened out, and the Pacific sat there the way it always sat. Vast and gray-green and ancient, and completely unbothered by the feelings of the people standing on its shore. He stood there for a moment. He breathed. And then he walked back. Clint was at a second monitor 10 feet away. He did not look over at Darnell. He did not need to. He had been coming to this coast for 60 years. He knew exactly what it did to people who were paying real attention. When the session ended, Esperanza moved through the crew shaking hands. When she reached Darnell, she took his hand in both of hers and held it for a moment, the way people hold things they want to be sure of. You were the one who called me, she said. Your voice on the phone. I almost said no. What changed your mind? Darnell asked. She looked at him with calm, dark eyes. You told me why it mattered to you, she said. Not why it mattered to the film. Not what you needed from me, why it mattered to you, personally in your own life. She paused. Not enough people do that. Most people tell you what they want. Very few people tell you why it matters. She let go of his hand. She walked to her car. Darnell watched her go. Behind him, Gwen called his name. There was a logistics question about tomorrow's shoot location. Weather was coming in from the north and the morning plan needed rethinking. He turned around. He went back to work. The story got out the way stories always get out. Not all at once. Not through one person with a plan. It seeped out the way water finds its way through old walls. Slowly, quietly, through the smallest available gap, until one day you look and the whole thing is through. A production assistant had filmed the sidewalk moment on their phone. Just a few seconds, 17 seconds to be exact. They had not posted it right away because they were not entirely sure what they had seen or what it meant or whether sharing it was the right thing to do. But 3 days later, once it became clear that something real had happened and had landed somewhere good, they posted it with no caption at all. Just the clip. 17 seconds. You could see Darnell walking away from the curb, his back straight, his pace quickening with every step. You could see Clint pick up his duffel bag and walk around to the driver's side of the car with the particular unhurried certainty of a man who has already made up his mind. You could see Preston Foyle's mouth open and then close again, like a man who had prepared a sentence and arrived at the moment of using it only to find the moment already gone. You could see the hotel bellhop standing completely still with a dropped suitcase at his feet, not moving to pick it up, just watching. You could see 2 tourists lifting their phones to film the man who was already being filmed, and you could see Clint Eastwood get into his car and drive away. That was the whole clip. 17 seconds, no music, no caption, no explanation. The internet looked at it for about 12 hours. Then it decided how it felt. Most people felt something large and a little hard to name, which they expressed in short and simple terms, because that is the only tool the internet reliably provides for large, hard-to-name feelings. He just got in his own car and drove. 47,000 likes. The way Foyle's mouth just stops moving. 112,000 likes. Oreo, I have watched this 11 times and I still don't have the words. 89,000 likes. An entertainment news site published a story with the headline that everyone shared and half the people argued about. Clint Eastwood's driver quits on the spot. How Clint handles it stuns everyone. A columnist named Terrence Abbott wrote 1,200 words about the difference between making noise and making a point. He used the clip as his example. He did not mention Preston Foyle by name. He did not need to. A podcaster named Sasha Okafor devoted 40 minutes to the question of what it actually means, practically in real life, not as a metaphor, to get into your own car and drive. Her episode was called The Quiet Exit. It was her most listened to episode by a wide margin. An 80-year-old retired judge in Milwaukee named Wendell Farrow watched the clip 7 times in a row, then called his daughter into the room and made her watch it too. That, he said, pointing at the screen, is a man who understands something. His daughter, who was 53 and had been a public defender for 20 years, watched it twice and said, "Yeah, he does." Neither of them said what the something was. They did not need to. Some things are understood best when they are left a little open, like a window that lets the air move through without asking you to name which direction the wind is coming from. Preston Foyle did not comment publicly. He had moved to a different production in a different state. He was in all the ways that mattered on paper, fine. This is the complicated and unsatisfying truth about people like Preston Foyle. They rarely collapse. They rarely arrive at a single dramatic moment of understanding that changes everything. They move on. They find a new room. They carry themselves into it. Whether they carry the same habits with them or learn something in the caring, that is not a thing a story can tell you. That is a thing only time knows, and time does not always report back. Gwen Morales was not mentioned in any of the coverage. She did not mind. She was busy. Darnell was mentioned once, in a longer piece in a film industry publication that described him as a former driver newly elevated to production coordinator, whose management of the shoot's logistics has been, by multiple accounts, quietly transformative. Rosalind read this on her lunch break. She took a screenshot. She sent it to her mother, her sister, and their family group chat with 5 words above the link. "That's my husband right there." Her mother replied within 4 seconds with a string of heart emojis so long it took up half the screen. Her sister replied, I know. The group chat continued for some time after that. Darnell did not see any of this until evening. He read the article slowly. He read Rosalind's screenshot. He sat with his phone in his hand for a long, quiet moment. Then he called his father. Reginald Whitaker was 71 years old. He lived in Sacramento in the same house Darnell had grown up in the same chair by the same window, watching the same street change slowly around him the way streets do. He still watched every Clint Eastwood movie he could find, when including the ones he had seen a dozen times, because some things hold up and you are allowed to return to them. "Pop," Darnell said. "I heard," Reginald said. His voice was what it had always been, low, steady, warm, with a particular quality that reminded Darnell of a bus engine turning over on a cold morning. Reliable, real. "Rosalind called me this afternoon." "Of course she did. She was right to call." A pause, the comfortable kind. "I'm proud of you, son." Darnell looked out the window of his house. The street was dark and quiet. A neighbor's sprinkler was watering the sidewalk instead of the lawn, and nobody had noticed yet. Across the street, a porch light was on, warm and yellow, for no particular reason except that someone had left it on, and it was doing its small, faithful job anyway. "I thought about you." Pop," Darnell said, "on the bus, when it was happening." "I know," Reginald said. "How did you do it for 41 years?" His father was quiet for a moment, not searching for the answer. He had known the answer for a long time. He was just finding the right shape for it. "Because every morning I started the engine," Reginald said, "and somebody got on who needed to get somewhere. And I took them there. That was real. Everything else was noise." Darnell sat with that. "I've got a new route, Pop," he said. I know you do, his father said quietly. Drive it well. The documentary premiered on a Thursday evening in March. The theater was small and old and smelled like wood polish and decades of dark rooms full of people watching light move across a screen. It held 200 seats. Every one of them was filled. Clint Eastwood sat in the back row. He sat there the way he did most things, without announcing himself, without needing the room to arrange itself around him. He had a cup of water. He had his coat folded on the seat beside him. He watched the film the way a man watches something he made with every careful part of himself. Not relaxed, not tense, but completely and quietly present. 3 rows behind him, Darnell Whitaker sat between Rosalind and Maya. Bree was at college, 300 miles north, watching the live stream on her laptop with her 2 roommates crowded in beside her. She had sent a voice message that afternoon. I am going to cry the whole time, and I do not care even a little bit. Darnell had listened to it twice and smiled both times. The film ran for 94 minutes. Esperanza Dula appeared for 11 of those minutes, 11 minutes out of 94. And yet, when the lights came back up and the room returned to itself, she was the person everyone was thinking about. Her face, her steady eyes, the way she had spoken about the abalone in the cold water, and her father in the morning the net came up almost empty, and she understood in her body before she understood in her mind that the world had changed in a way that would not be changing back. A woman 3 seats down from Rosalind was crying quietly into a folded program. Rosalind herself was not crying. She was sitting very straight with her hands in her lap and her eyes bright and her jaw set in the particular way it set when she was feeling something large and had decided to feel it with her full self rather than let it spill. Darnell held her hand in the dark. He did not say anything. He did not need to. After the film ended and the lights came up, there was a long moment, 2 full seconds, maybe 3, where nobody in the theater made a sound. Not applause, not conversation, not the rustle of coats and programs. Just 200 people sitting together in the particular silence that only a true thing can make when it has been fully received. Then the applause came, warm and full and real. After the Q&A and the photographs and the long, slow movement of people through the lobby, after the festival director had shaken everyone's hands twice, and a very tall city council member from Monterey had talked to Clint for 20 minutes about coastal preservation, Clint found Darnell near the theater door. And they stood together in the easy way of 2 people who have been through something real and come out the other side of it changed in ways they could not fully explain, but did not need to. Good film, Darnell said. Good production, Clint said. A comfortable silence. The kind their library of shared silences had always included, but that felt different now, fuller, like a room with more furniture in it. What are you doing next? Darnell asked. There is a project, Clint said. Early stages. I will tell you about it when there is something solid to tell. He paused. It will need a coordinator. Darnell looked at him steadily. I will need to talk to my wife, he said. The smallest suggestion of something passed across Clint's face. Not quite a smile. Something quieter than a smile and more lasting. Obviously, he said. They shook hands. And now we have arrived at the moment this story promised you at the very beginning, the cliffhanger, the thing planted in the prologue on the very first page, when a car door slammed on a Tuesday morning in Carmel, and the whole world held its breath, and a retired nurse named Opal Devereaux eventually cried for 20 minutes straight watching something on the news. You were told that Clint Eastwood did something nobody expected, something so simple it barely looked like anything at all. Something that was the opposite of grand. Here is what it was. After Clint drove away from the hotel that Tuesday morning and left Preston Foyle standing on the sidewalk with his mouth open, after he turned south on Highway 1 and drove through the fog and sat at the coastal overlook and made his decision and called Harriet Voss and heard her say, I told you so for 45 thorough seconds. He turned the car around. He drove back to the hotel. He parked. He walked to the spot on the sidewalk where Darnell's black cap was still sitting on the hood of the backup vehicle, exactly where Darnell had left it, small and still in the morning fog. He picked it up. He put it in his coat pocket. And then he drove to the Blue Door Bakery. The whole time they sat together and drank their black coffee and told the truth to each other across a small table. The whole time Clint talked about Harriet and his father's delivery truck and the wrong seat and the right one, the cap was in his pocket. At the end, when Darnell said okay and meant every syllable of it, Clint reached into his pocket. He set the cap on the table between them. He did not explain it. He did not make a speech about what it represented or what he intended by it or what he hoped Darnell would understand. He simply put it on the table the way you put something back in the place it belongs. Darnell looked at it. He looked at Clint. He picked up the cap. He put it on. That was the moment. That was all of it. A man going back for a hat. Opal Devereaux was a retired nurse in Bakersfield, 72 years old, who had spent 40 years of her life in hospital rooms watching people receive news, good and bad, and the complicated kind that turns out to be something else entirely with time. When the extended clip appeared online showing the full sidewalk scene, and then the moment in the bakery, she watched it all the way through without stopping. Then she watched it again. Then she set her phone down on the kitchen table and cried for 20 minutes, not because the moment was dramatic or loud or built for feeling. She cried because it was the exact opposite of all of those things. She cried because in 40 years of watching people at their most human, she had learned that the truest measure of a person is never the large gesture made in front of an audience. It is the small, private, unnecessary one. The one nobody required. The one that cost nothing except the willingness to turn around when you could have kept driving. She thought about every person she had ever known who needed someone to go back for the hat and never had anyone go. She thought about every time she herself had turned around and every time she had not. She thought about the woman she had been at 22, starting her first shift, terrified and certain in equal measure, clipboard in her hands, determined to be the person who paid attention. She sat in her kitchen in Bakersfield with the late afternoon light coming warm through the window and the neighborhood going quietly about its ordinary business outside, and she thought, it is not too late for any of it. She got up, she made dinner. She picked up her phone and called her sister, a call she had been meaning to make for 6 weeks and had kept finding reasons to put off. Her sister answered on the second ring. I was just thinking about you, her sister said. I know, Opal said. Me too. And outside, the evening came in soft and unhurried over the Central Valley, and somewhere up the coast, the Pacific Ocean went on doing what it had always done, enormous and ancient and patient and completely unbothered by the feelings of the people standing on its shore, watching it, grateful for it, changed by it, carrying it with them long after they had turned and walked back toward the rest of their lives. And that is the full story. A Tuesday morning, a sidewalk, a cap set down on the hood of a car, and one man who turned around when he did not have to. Before you go, drop a comment below and tell us where you are watching from. It does not matter if it is a small town nobody has heard of or a big city on the other side of the world. We read every single one, and we love knowing where this community reaches. If this story moved you even a little, if it reminded you of someone in your life, or made you want to be a little more like the person who goes back, please hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it helps this story reach someone out there who might really need to hear it today. And if you believe the world gets a little better every time we choose kindness over convenience, subscribe to this channel. That is exactly what we are here for, every single video. Now click on the video appearing on your screen right now, because the next story is already waiting for you. We will see you there.